Welcome to Lead Your Life, the podcast for people who are seeking harmony in business and in life. My name is Debbie Heiser, and I'm an inner mastery and business mindset coach and the chief igniter here at the Lit Up Life. I feel an urgency to help people let go of past messaging so that they can make a lot of money doing what they love without sacrificing what they value most. Welcome. We're glad you're here.
Straight from the corners of my mind is where I find my sanity. It's a place, another land.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Lead Your Life with Debbie Heiser. I just wanted to thank all of you and really express a lot of gratitude for those of you that maybe it's your first time listening. So thanks for being here. And if you're someone that's been listening for a while or watching on YouTube, just thank you. Thank you for taking the time to allow me in this space of yours and to help bring some inspiration and talk about other people that are leading their life. I feel so strongly that my calling is to help other people lead a lit up life. I feel so much support from people. People reach out to me in social media or text me. They'll say things like, I'm so happy for you to be living your lit up life. And although that's awesome, and I love my life, doesn't mean that there's not hard stuff in it, but I feel such a calling to help other people do the same thing. And so anyway, that's really what I do, is help people lead a lit up life. And that can look different for each person because each person is different. So, but I do also help entrepreneurs really get clear on what they want their life to look like so that the business becomes a conduit to that versus the business running their lives. And I get it. I've had periods of time, I keep messing with my hair here, but when I hired my first person to come on and work with me, a contract employee, I went through kind of a terror barrier and was a little bit nervous about that. And I have a coach, and she helped me kind of through that. And then when I hired my second person, in faith that, the things were going to come that needed to come from that. And so we all have those moments when we doubt or are unsure. And it doesn't mean that my life is all unicorn and rainbows, but it's also in how I look at it, right? And the perspective that I have. And I will tell you that some days I'm better at it than others, but I like to start out my day with gratitude. And one of the first things that I try to do in the morning is when I wake up, sometimes I'll wake up before my alarm, especially in the summer because it gets so light here and the birds start chirping really early in the morning, but I'll lay there for a few minutes and really, for whatever it is for you, whether it's Buddha, God, whatever, I take a moment and I connect with my higher power and I start out in praise and really start out my day, thanking the fact that I live where I live, thanking the fact that I get to wake up this morning and, really feeling blessed for the life that I have. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't want more. I want to be able to help impact more people and really create this ripple effect where people are stepping in and letting go of some of the things that I've learned through my time, but these messages that we receive about all sorts of things. And hopefully, if you've been a listener for a while, you've been hearing some of those messages that I hear that I'm trying to help people like just be aware of, and whether or not they themselves also kind of do this. I've also been in this mode over the last 2 or 3 months about a book I've been reading called The Energy of Money, and about how we let our energy seep out. And many of you have heard me talk about this vase that we have, and I'll talk about that here in a second. But I'm going to today really kind of delve into the universal laws again. And I've done these before. And as my knowledge about the universal laws and how I see them play out in my life and how that builds evidence in my evidence bank, the more I want to continue to share those and share the experiences that I've had to help other people hopefully grow in their knowledge of that. because part of what we're talking about here in July, everywhere, is about knowing, like having this deep knowing and trusting that what you want is possible. And this idea also of what we want. Sometimes want can be considered kind of a scarcity mindset, but it's really about a vision and this like deep knowing that happens. I teach a lot of this at Gonzaga through a foresight and strategy class about like just this deep knowing and trusting that deep knowing. And so I thought, you know what? I want to talk about particularly one universal law today that helps with this knowing and trusting. And it circles back to this whole idea too of waking up in praise and thankfulness, right? Because that actually changes the neurochemistry of your brain and can help your brain through different neural pathways with this. So the law that I want to talk about today is called the law of divine oneness. And you can Google it and find all sorts of things out there. But basically, what it's saying is that everything in the universe is interconnected. And so I'm connected to you, you're connected to me, I'm connected to, animals, the trees, everything, right? Um, and the more and more I learn about nature too, and how particularly like how I'm going to go off on a tangent here for a minute, but how like these ancient trees, like up in the Pacific Northwest, up further up in Canada, and in the US, people are going in and taking down these huge cedar trees to make furniture that people are wanting with like these big planks of cedar. And what's happening is these ancient trees have been there, and trees are definitely, we're all interconnected, right? This interconnection that happens. And by cutting down those ancient trees, they're actually decimating these forests. And so, anyway, I don't want to get onto some kind of political environment thing there, but it's really sad to me, and it just helps prove the interconnectedness of things. And I look at our indigenous tribes and how the folks I know anyway, like how spiritual they are with nature, and I just think they've got it figured out. And one of these days we need to wake up and before all the resources are gone in our world. But okay, anyway, enough on that tangent. But the law of divine oneness is really about this idea of everything in the universe is interconnected. And so, and let me just say the law and then I'll break it down. So, everything in the universe is interconnected and we form an inseparable web of existence. Our thoughts, our actions, our emotions, and our energy emits into the universe in vibrational senses and creates a tapestry that affects the whole. So, I've always said to people, when you want to understand the law of vibration, part of it is understanding, like we've all had someone that maybe we've talked to in our past that potentially we leave and we feel energized. That's an example of an energy exchange, right? And you may have had the same thing happen in the opposite realm where you have been in a conversation with someone and it actually drains your energy, right? So this is kind of that interconnectedness. And when you think about that, we are individuals. And as individuals, we have to have some of that individualness in order to see the connection. It's just like a whiteout, right? Like if I'm skiing and it's snowing really hard, it's really hard to catch where you're at. That's why I like having trees on the sides of the runs. And it makes me sad when Schweitzer cuts down trees on the sides of the runs because it makes it harder to see when the conditions are not great. Same thing if you stare at a blank wall, right? Like a white wall, it like takes you off balance a little bit because you don't see the individual things that go together. I think too, that's why I see so many people so enamored with like these big murals that are made with like pictures of individual people or like dot art. It's a perfect example to show that we are individuals, but we're connected to all beings and objects with this continuous flow of energy and consciousness. So everything in the universe is interconnected, and it forms somewhat of this idea of dependency. And when I say codependency, we can sometimes go on the opposite side of the universal law of polarity. There's interconnectedness where we're individuals, we're doing our thing, but the opposite of that is codependency. And that's where we take on responsibilities that aren't ours to own. When I jump in and try to help someone heal, and I don't give them back the energy that they need back to heal it, and I try to take on that responsibility, I'm not allowing them to heal. I'm not allowing them to grow. If I jump in as a leader and someone on my team is doing something and I jump in and I do it and I jump in trying to help, that really is a message to that person that I don't either trust that they can do it or trust that it will get done the way I want it done, from a little bit of a control freak here. And so this codependency is where then I'm taking on that responsibility that's not mine to own. And that goes with personal things, particularly. And once we realize the interconnectedness that we have, we can have a mental release and have greater flow, because we realize, some people will say, not my farm, not my pig, not my circus, not my clown or monkey, whatever. That's what they're talking about, right? Like, it's not my responsibility. I can be there to hold someone up and provide a space to listen, but I don't have to take that on. And there's a lot of that happens in our world. We live in a complaint connection society, where I just want you to notice, and I kind of noticed this too, where if it was sunny, I'd be like, oh, darn, it's not snowing. Or if it was snowing, I'd be like, oh, I so want the sun. And how when you walk in somewhere, people use the weather a lot for this, but just notice how much people try to connect based on complaining and having a complaint that's similar to each other. And so that's kind of that interconnectedness where we can influence someone, but being codependent, taking on someone else's energy or taking on someone else's stuff, is not mine to do. Also, I used to be teased all the time, and I do get excited with surprises. And those of you that are clients are laughing because when I order swag, I get really excited. But a lot of times I would talk to people and I would tell people things that weren't my story to tell. And so now when someone tells me something, 99.9% of the time, it's not my story to tell, so I don't go on any further. Now, I have to say, I ask now. So when my son and daughter-in-law told me that they were pregnant again, I was super excited. And I texted back and said, is this common knowledge? Like, I want to know whether or not I can share it, because it is part of my story now, because it's my grandson, but I also wanted to respect them, right? So that's part of this idea of the difference between interconnectedness and codependency. Let's face it, sometimes as an entrepreneur and a business leader, we need some guidance, support, and community. So we here at The Lit Up Life have 3 ways that you can work with us in order to achieve that. As a private client, we work together to quantum leap your business by discovering strategies to help you move past what's holding you back and allow you to identify what you want your life to look like. The result? Your business becomes the conduit to the lifestyle, success, and impact that you intend. Now, I'm a huge believer in the power of collaboration. So in our community masterminds, you can join in with other high vibrational business owners who want to level up, increase impact, and financial gain, all with a tribe of other women to support and encourage you on your journey. Currently, we're accepting application for this women's mastermind group, which is a year-long program for women in business who are ready for that next level of success. We create deep personal awareness in a safe and supportive space where you can experience growth with others who are on that same path. Through weekly sessions with our program coaches, teachings that go beyond the buzzwords, and immersive retreats in places like Mexico, the Dominican Republic, or Belize, we work together to create long-term abundance and lasting impact in your life and business. The last and final way to get involved with us is our group coaching programs. They provide the opportunity for teaching, masterminding, and feeling like you aren't alone on this ride. Come join us. Now, the other piece of this is that we're all a collective, and we have to understand and experience this relative separation. So this absolute, that's what I'm talking about with the whiteout or the white wall. where if we don't understand our own oneness and fall into like this codependency, that usually in my experience creates pain, it creates suffering, it creates things that I don't want in my life, right? Like it doesn't mean I'm not going to be there to support somebody, but I'm not going to take it on. And then this whole idea of having the law of divine oneness also speaks to relativity. And when you think about the law of relativity, it really is about the fact that everything just is, right? Like there's no value on anything. If you think about a small child, the only thing they want is they want to be comfortable. And if that means they want food because they're they don't even know if they want food, right? They feel hunger pains and they poop or they pee, right? And so then what happens is in this case there is a codependency because they can't literally physically survive without someone else helping to care for them. So they don't care if they're puking all over someone, they just know it comes out, right? And when they're hungry, they cry. When they're uncomfortable, they cry. That's like the basic, right? Like of everything. And so relativity means everything just is. And a small child like that, their basic relativity is everything just is. We assign value and meaning through comparisons. And if you think about understanding the world around us is really done through language, it's done through words. And so we'll get into that in later episodes, but how these words are what entangle us into these expectations or these should do's or should be's, right? So the universal law of divine oneness talks about that everything is relative. There is this idea of relative separation because we have an interconnectedness, but we have to have relative separation and making sure that it's not a codependency, but it's more of interconnectedness. And then there's this idea when it comes to divine oneness around subconscious momentum. And this one is around the fact that our beliefs, our self-image, whatever you've heard me talk about double binds and loyalty pacts, and the perception of our identity are developed, and I was getting to this through words. And these words reside in our subconscious mind. And that program in our mind continues until we become self aware and identify what that is. And then we're able to transform that message. And these subconscious thoughts and programming, it is a cause. So the law of cause and effect. So it's a cause set into motion. So if you think about when have you in your life had an idea and you've gone forward and created form in that? That's a whole different law that we'll talk about maybe in the next episode. But when we think about the subconscious momentum, I talk about it's easier to move a moving cart than it is one standing still. And when you take these ideas and you create form in them, take some action, share it with someone else that's going to take action, creating some inspired action around it, then that sets things in motion. The same thing holds true of talk that is not honoring to ourselves. I know this has happened to me before. I went to a movie actually and ate like a huge bag of popcorn and had some junior mints. And I had been eating really healthy, had been feeling super good. I woke up the next morning, I felt bloated. I just felt kind of icky from eating that. And I started to kind of beat myself up, like, better. Why did you do this? And yeah, it tasted awesome going down. Um, but is that really what you wanted to do? And I kind of went into the spin, right? So the same thing holds true. I got myself out of it because I have tools to utilize to help do that. But it was this programming that was coming back, right? Because we have these well-worn paths. And interestingly enough, you're going to hear from a gentleman that I interviewed. I interviewed him today, which is actually in April, and you're not hearing this until later in June, and his will be later after that. But he was talking about the neuroplasticity of our brains and how these brain paths, if you think about like a herd of buffalo, and they keep going to the same watering hole and they create this trench, right? And it's a pretty deep trench because they keep following the same path. Very similar to our the neurobiology of our brain. So then one buffalo decides it's shorter to go a different way, so he starts going a different way. And it's not a path at that time. He's just going through the grass. And then one by one, buffaloes start to follow him. And after a period of time, that neural pathway or that path to the water is more developed, but it takes time to develop that. And so this is this whole idea of subconscious thoughts and programming, how we can change our programming, epigenetics. And so all of this neuroscience stuff I kind of geek out on. And so being able to shift some of those thoughts, it does take time. So like me even getting up and beating myself up. I grew up in a household where my mom was always dieting. Now I'm not blaming her, but I saw that, I learned from that, and then I kind of stayed in that. We live in a society of diet culture. And so getting myself out of that diet culture has not always been the easiest thing, because after so many years, my path has been worn pretty well. And so occasionally the buffalo go down the well-worn path, right? So don't beat yourself up if that happens, but realize you can change that based on your subconscious thoughts and programming. But that program continues to go forward until it is identified and there's some self-awareness around it. And so that's what I do, is I help people become really self-aware of what some of those programmed thoughts are. And if you feel like you keep hitting a wall and can't figure out how to get past that wall, and like why, like you say you really want to go do something, but it's hard for you to do it. I was talking to someone the other day where they were having a hard time doing some things from a marketing perspective for their business. And we started to uncover that it was really more about being visible, because her mom was much more visible than her. And anytime she did something kind of outside of staying behind her mom, she felt like that wasn't an okay thing to do. And because we love our moms, our parents, we don't want to make them wrong. So she shrunk herself in that example, right? So then becoming self-aware that that's not her story to tell. And we're not making her mom wrong by her stepping in and talking about her lane of genius. And once you get to the other side, it's like, oh, wow, that was so obvious, but it's not obvious when you're in it. So if you want to talk more about that, I would love to help you with that. And again, I'm just so grateful that all of you are here listening. We'll dig into some other universal laws as we go on. But with that, folks, it's a wrap, and I hope to see you next week. If you would, do me a solid and do me a favor and go out and rate this and leave a little comment. I appreciate it. So thanks. Bye. That's a wrap for this conversation. I'm so glad you've joined us. Remember to subscribe to the podcast so you can catch all of our future episodes, and visit us at thelituplife.com for details on how you can become part of the Lit Up Life community. A quick shout out to my friend Jackie Wilson and her friends, the creators of our amazing theme music. Thanks so much for allowing us to share this perfect song with our listeners. Looking forward to having you listen in to our next episode.